briefly explain what AI means to you and what you think it will do in the future.
The way we look at AI, Tristan, is we like to look at it from analogy like the left brain and the right brain concept. That's how I see it. That's how Pega sees it. On the left brain is really what the analytical AI means, and something that we've been doing for more than a decade, helping customers understand the data points and decide what to recommend, what is the next best action. And obviously, in the last 2 years, we call it the creative AI, the right brain AI, and using Gen AI, how do you infuse both together? So it's an interesting journey that we are seeing in the industry where customers are starting to explore both and a best of breed as well.
And what AI means to us is, what does AI mean in the real-time context? What could AI do if it was fed real-time information? Because most of the AI models that we have and the technology innovations are about learning historical data and doing interesting things with it. But if AI has to get into a predictive mode and it'll need other associated technologies to work with it, how do we actually get real-time information operating with AI? And that's the area of AI innovation and investigation that we are up to.
Now, in Huawei Cloud itself, we look at AI as one of the core competencies as a value-added services to the customers. So AI is very important for us because when you look at the whole digitizations, AI will actually accelerate the whole digitalizations for most of the industry. And I think most of you will know Huawei actually own the full tech stack from the hardware to the middleware as well as the software. So Huawei also has a lot of development capabilities, and we also produce our own what we call the generative pre-trained model, and that is the GPT model that we call, the product name is called Pangu. Yeah.
From an AI perspective, Tricentis actually is one of the forefront leaders where they embarked on the AI journey pretty early, before AI became cool. Our solutions are AI enabled, which means that every stage of your quality assurance in your software testing life cycle, you can utilize our solutions, accelerate your digital initiatives that you have in your organization, and be ensured that your data is actually secure. You get the results at each stage of your life with AI-enabled technologies.
What are some of the challenges you see of AI as the adoption is rising?
I think the biggest challenge for us is figuring out what to do with AI. A lot of people think that we have entered the era of AI, and certainly we have, but AI is not new. AI started maybe about even 40 years ago, right? Or 50 years ago. And I would say that today, if you think of AI as a 10,000 kilometer run, we are probably at step 3. It's so nascent, right? But it can be as narrow as automation and really as broad as, the sky's the limit. We haven't really figured out, what we can do. But we certainly are very clear that it's going to make a huge impact to all of us.
It's a good question. In fact, there's a few things I will say. In fact, we have a really good article on our website. It's called the AI Manifesto. I encourage you to check it out. Essentially, a lot of companies that I speak to are starting to think, where do I start? How do I start? And the advice I always give is the last thing you want to do is to jump right in to hire a bunch of data scientists and as much data as we can. I'll break it down into 3 parts for you, Tristan. The first thing I think is important is really for the company to understand the why. What are we trying to achieve out of this? Is it to drive revenue? Is it to drive retention, long-term relationships? And then it comes to the how and what. That's where the types of AI will come in. When are you going to use it? How are you going to apply it? And the third part, in my opinion, is starting to see more importance is around responsible AI, or some call it ethical AI. So these are the challenges I think companies are going through. They're also struggling to say, how do we balance? Obviously, the other parts will be around security, right? Do we make sure the data is safe? When do I pass out data to the LLMs? And how do we control all of that? How do we make sure that the data is up to date, is actually real? There's no hallucination involved. So those are the things that I see in the market. And there's a bit of a gray area between transparency as well as opaqueness. So those are the things I feel companies are starting to learn more as they start to embark. But I do see there will be a big shift in Gen AI as a consumption compared to the left brain that I talked about earlier, because it's just being pushed from consumer down to enterprises.
everyone will know that ChatGPT has pervasively brought the advantage of how the AI can actually be broadened out to the consumer market. Like for example, you can create text prompt to create stories. You can create text prompts to images and even in terms of videos. But in terms of industry's challenges, AI is actually more designed for the industry vertical solutions. So most of the general models that you are looking at out there in the markets, a lot of customers that I spoke to, whenever they want to use those foundational model, they have to really to look at the expertise to actually build the level 1 or level 2 foundational model on top in order to meet their vertical industry requirement. So expectation is always a challenge for us. Wherever customer will come to us that they want to maybe a generative AI models for their industry challenges. Like for example, in the mining industry, they may want to build a model to be better in detecting the objects that actually go through the conveyor belt whenever they dig the mine deep underground. So when you look at some of the models out there in the market, they will have to need to do a lot of customization. And that's where the domain part comes in. And what Huawei does is we have vertical industry teams that will actually help the customer to use their training data and to build a model that is actually specific for them. So these are some of the key challenges that we face in the training of the model as well as how you use that models.
From the AI perspective, I think few of the key challenges, common ones would be from the ethics perspective, right? So how do you ensure that the data that is being used is decent enough for your models to be trained around? Now, one of the biggest challenge is on the adoption side of it. An organization can actually go ahead and say, fine, adopt an AI in my digital landscape. But when it comes to the consumers, the organization members that are there, you might face challenge in adoption. You might also face adoption skill issues, right? How do you actually leverage what has been implemented? So that is one of the challenge. Another challenge is most of the customers ask, okay, so can I have this particular AI engine locally? Now, infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges in adoption of AI from a enterprise setup. Then another challenge I would actually see is from the bias perspective, right? AI bias is pretty much very common. There are a lot of incidents that have been reported that how AI can actually segregate a certain section of candidates, right, and not allowing them to sit for an interview just because of the data that has been trained was biased from the starting, right? So these are a few challenges that AI can bring and are basically something that enterprises are and will be facing in future as well.
Yeah, the challenge again is from my perspective, there's a multitude of challenges. There's ethical challenges, security challenges, adoption, learning, skill set. There's a lot of challenges. But from my vantage point, the use of AI when it comes to real-time use cases. So OpenAI has made generative AI really, really popular. I've seen my kids initially try to get their essays written through AI, but the school has taught them enough that this is not the right way to do it. Get your essays graded by ChatGPT, and they've gone pretty creative in doing that. But commercially or for businesses, AI with real-time information, how do we solve that problem? How do we get AI done in an affordable manner such that business can afford it to solve real business problems that doesn't need 70 million parameters in a model? You could do with a much smaller model deployed on premises or in your cloud instances, deployed even at the edge, for example, in a retail store to do some predictive stuff there. So the challenge to solve this problem, that we have access to real-time data, more and more of the businesses are becoming real-time. We've done a lot of projects together with NCS, whether it's at LTA or a whole bunch of other systems in the transportation domain. How do we bring AI with the real-time context and add business value? That's the challenge that I think we want to focus on.
And with some of those key challenges, I'm sure there are some really good opportunities. So what are some of the key opportunities that you see from AI?
I would say that if you look at AI, the three biggest industries that will benefit is number one, media and entertainment. We've seen it, with generative AI. You can create music, you can create books, You can create movies just by typing, and describing what you want to do, right? So that's one big area. But the other one that's really big is in financial services. We grapple with scams, we grapple with fraud. We're all entering into the digital banking era. So this technology, the AI technology, can really help for us to mitigate the risk, do a very strong risk management, and to make sure that we help everyone to manage and secure their finance. The third one I think is going to be very, very big is in area of healthcare. Just think about the pandemic time, and Dell is fortunate enough to work with the pharmaceutical company, and because of the technologies that we have and provided for them, we accelerated the release of vaccines. And nobody could imagine that it only took us 2 years, right, to recover from the pandemic area. But I do believe that technology helped a lot. And with AI, we are going to further improve that, and make the world a much safer place.
I think the biggest motivator for the organization is that how to improve the efficiency, right? From our organization perspective, as I mentioned, all our solutions are AI enabled, which means that from a traditional solution perspective, we are not asking the users to just simply go ahead and use our solutions, but also use it in an efficient fashion. We have solutions such as Vision AI that basically takes away the dependency on technology that needs to be automated, which means that today, as a non-tester or a non-coder, I can actually go into the system, don't care what is the technology, and I can start automating it. Similarly, we have capabilities such as generative AI capabilities, where testers, from the conventional way of writing all these test cases manually, can now ask the system, this is my requirement, can you generate these test cases for me? What helps is that it takes away the pain or the time spent in generating all those scenarios and makes it more, from a critical perspective, users a bit more augmented in that way that they can perform their activities better. And not only that, we have solutions that are currently in pipeline that we are actually actively building that's going to make AI autonomous. You provide a particular system, they have been trained on certain known areas or data information, as you might want to say, and down the line, it will be able to take the task of performing some autonomous automation on the fly, which helps that, again, coming to the part of productivity and efficiency. So biggest opportunity that is there in the enterprises is how to leverage what we have today, how to make our processes better, and thereby make sure the organization reaches the business objective that they lay out.
Opportunities, again, go by industry, right? So we've done a lot of work, for example, in transportation systems. Can the trains run better? Can faults be predicted with AI? And we've done an implementation a few years ago, which was called Faster. It's in the press. People can look it up. So having various feeds from the transportation system, whether it's trains, buses, and then you add airlines and airports to it, you add the ports to it, and now you have 360-degree view of what's moving in the country, and then the opportunity of making it run better, predicting faults, and giving much, much better customer experience on the back of it. If I shift industries and I go to banking, which is about 50% of our business, what can AI do in terms of giving offers, getting new offers, identifying customer behavior? So let's say Sumit has his 2 kids and they are about to go to university, and his needs are going to be how do you pay for their university, and he also has a certain kind of job which makes him travel a lot. So how do you create a product from an investment perspective so that you can hook Sumit in from a relationship management standpoint? So today this is down to the art of the RM. Can we have an assistant to the relationship manager powered by AI, feeding real-time information of some of its transactions. And that could be an amazing opportunity.
Maybe I just relate one local opportunity that we have done, my team has done. In March this year, 2024, we actually participate a challenge with the Singapore Land Authority to use GPT on the one map. I think everyone is maybe very familiar with the one map, which is the maps that is actually provided by the Singapore Land Authority. You can actually look at information like, for example, how close is the school to the house, right? Or maybe to look for some of the areas that you want to go. In one map itself, the current services that they offer is basically a search service, right? It's a filter services. So what Huawei has done is in December last year when SLA launched a challenge, we actually submitted our solution to use GPT, which is Huawei solution, to be able to use a language model to converse with the maps. And the key challenge with that challenge itself is how you make a language model be aware to talk to the spatial data. And so with our unique solution, we were able to integrate both the spatial data as well as our language model. At the end of the day, customer was able to communicate with the map just like a layman's. Like for example, I may ask, tell me which are the property if I want to buy in Bedok that's close to this particular school. So the language model will be able to apprehend what is the intention of this person that's asked the questions and bring out the map data and present it to the screen. So this is a very interesting project that we have won. And we also showcased that in March this year in the Joe exhibitions in Singapore itself. Yeah.
Fantastic example.
Obviously, GenAI will be a big shift in terms of the next jobs. Out of which, the good news is 75% of these jobs are down to 4 functions. Right? The first is sales and marketing, as you can imagine. The second is developer. And the third would be customer operations. And the final one would be R&D. The good thing is Pega is involved in 3 out of the 4 of them. So for example, if you look at sales and marketing, how can we take the perfect combination of left brain and right brain to solve that problem? In fact, I will talk about a customer story. This is what the National Australian Bank, NAB, you might be familiar with that.
Yes,
is using that.
yeah, big customer of ours. Yep.
Exactly. In fact, the program that they call is called the customer brain. Right? So they call it themselves. We didn't tell them to name it. And the problem they're trying to solve is how can we take this 160 years of relationship with 10 million customers and personalize that in a real-time fashion in a digital and mobile-first way. So what they've done is they've taken 36 billion data points across all the historical data, real-time digital touch points, and be able to predict what is next. And they are starting to think about how can they use things like GenAI to tailor the messages a little bit more. So there's a bit on sales and marketing. If you think about customer operations, huge opportunities out for us. And I sit a lot with call center agents. And one of them, sometimes they deal with cases which have been evolved for 3-4 weeks. So imagine I take over the case. What I'm going to do? I would like to have a very quick summary of what has been transpired, the key problems that I have, who has been involved. That's what Pega GenAI Coach does for you. And if you look at software development, this is my favorite, right? I'm able to reduce the entire development time to using GenAI to suggest blueprints and workflows and data models to fast track that piece. In fact, I would recommend you to look at the Pega GenAI blueprint if you haven't.
Yep.
It's something that we believe will be a true game changer moving forward.
What do you think are some of the ethical considerations of AI that we need to consider?
I think from an ethics perspective, though I'm not a healthcare expert, but I feel that healthcare systems or organizations have a lot of personal data that is there. Now, apart from data resilience, we should also look from a cybersecurity standpoint, because when AI was not there in the picture and we have so many cybersecurity breaches, with AI having access to that amount of data, I think cybersecurity is one area as well that we need to look from an ethics perspective, because in the past there has been actions such as SQL injection, right, to fetch information from the users. With common folks who have access to GenAI capability now, it becomes more and more important that organizations take a bit more responsible approach that how a common mass is going to use that particular AI system. For example, if a user prompts and starts using an AI system, that system might be having some malicious intent behind the scene, gives you a prompt that you can actually copy paste, use it, but actually behind the scene, it might be a script that is actually extracting information from you, because nowadays it's very common to ask, say, for example, I'm going to code ChatGPT, give me a code for this particular thing. And today there might be another system that might be using the GPT-4 models, but trained on data that is malicious in intent.
Yeah, wow.
And then that is going to cause issues down the line if this data is used in an organization perspective, right? So I think from an ethics perspective, the organizations who can now leverage and provide the facility of providing that infrastructure of training these data models, I think a governance should be coming on the AI front as well, like we have from the GDPR and PDPA perspective. I think the AI systems need to be modeled on that level as well, so that the governance and ethics is not a afterthought. It basically starts from that side, so that downstream data or information that gets generated is more reliable.
The ethics part is an interesting one. For us, we call it responsible AI. It's something that we've been doing for the past more than 10 years. And I like to use acronyms. So if you look at EFTA is what I would define it. E and F stands for ethical and fair. How do we make sure we're able to measure that? And T and A is really transparent and accountable. In short, is it an explainable AI? I would say companies and countries are starting to put forth models. It's something that there is no right and wrong. It's always an evolving thing. In my opinion, there's two things that's important. I think it's important that we can have a tool to be able to test out how fair the algorithm and the data is. So for example, it may not be as important if you were to decide who to push out a notification on your mobile phone, but it's very important to be explainable who I grant the loan to, right? The other thing that we do is we have a tool that actually you can run through historical data and run and see, are there certain elements that might have been biased? For example, a certain group of individuals who tends to not to get approved, for example, certain ethnic or certain age group or certain household. So those are the things that's important. I think it will continue to be evolved. I predict or I feel over the next few years, countries and companies will have more and more frameworks, but something that not to be overlooked at.
In most of our discussion with the customers, we always told the customer that Huawei always advocate a data model that's actually customized and owned by the customers. The reason we say that is because when you look at the foundational model, a lot of models are being trained by general data. General data, like for example, in the Western world, you use the data from the Western world to train the model itself. So it comes with its own way of how they want to answer a particular questions or to infer a particular reasonings. And if you use the Eastern model, then the Eastern model is trained with the Eastern data. So one of the ethical questions that we always face and we always told the customer is biases. How you avoid the biasness, how to ensure there's a fairness to the recommendations. So what Huawei has done is, in fact, in 2019, we published a paper. We call that the AI securities and privacy protection. In that paper, we talk about how we use the way, like for example, transparency and traceability to ensure that when this model is being trained the data, some of the biasness can actually be filtered out with techniques that we actually been done. So in this context, when we were to develop that foundational model for the customer, and when the customer put into that solution, like for example, maybe a very simple chatbot, then the way how he reply can be very neutral, but yet it has its own context to that particular industry. Like for example, in Singapore, most of the customer may have a particular questions, but due to the environmental, the answer that they want to receive may be based on this context. Well, in Malaysia, may be a different way. Yeah. So these are the things that we felt that in ethical implication, it does impact some of the implementation by using the GPT models for some of the work that we have done.
If you look at the deep fake that we're experiencing, you really can't tell what is real and what is not. The other one is because it deals with a lot of data, it has to be secure, right? And how do we manage this? I believe that all of us have to come together. It's going to be a collaboration amongst entrepreneurs, collaborations amongst enterprises, as well as with the government. We all got to come together and share the information, learn from each other, and protect each other.
I think from an ethical challenge perspective, the biggest challenge is how do you train your models, right? What data are you using to train your models? Do you have access to that data? Is this your data? Are you authorized to use that data? And other than that, who uses AI to get an illegal, unfair advantage? So I hope the legal frameworks, the guardrails, the regulatory frameworks are deployed enough and quickly. I think European Union has already made a few announcements there, so that we can get these ethical issues sorted. But essentially, it's the kind of data that you train your models. And again, we being the fast data people, we would be wanting to feed AI, whether it's real model training or even RAG databases, vector databases around AI, so that when you're having conversational inputs with a GPT kind of a model, the accuracy of the data that are being served is actually your data on your network rather than something that it learned from the internet. So using what we call the event mesh, which is our capability, and evolving that into a context mesh, that the context for AI is brought in with a real-time and ethical point of view.
Building off on that a little bit, the digital resilience side is really important when it comes to AI as well. What are some of the things that we should consider around digital resilience and AI and how they converge together?
I think we should start with a very resilient data strategy. So whenever we are looking for training our models, for example, we need to ensure that the data that we are actually using to train our models is and has been from trusted sources. Even though it is from trusted sources, we need to have a plan of how do you test for that data quality. For example, Tricentis has a solution called data integrity, which is very uncommon because traditionally testing is more on functional testing, performance testing, which we also do. But from a data testing perspective, where a lot of transactional data is getting created by the second, it becomes very hard to basically filter and identify what is it that is a good data, what is a bad data. Right? When it comes from a data resiliency perspective, how good is your data will be the better response that you'll be getting from an AI system. Data integrity solution basically provides you that resilience capability that irrespective of the data source, you can be assured that with every cycle of your data that your model is being trained is scanned through a certain set of parameters. You can apply regulatory compliance to that business logic on the data integrity solutions, and you can be assured that your data is getting validated or tested for integrity every single time.
The accuracy of AI, especially when it comes to taking real world decisions, we need to have digital resilience play a very important part there. So as AI gets more and more trusted, we're already trusting it in autonomous driving, for example, where there are implications that if an AI driven car runs into an accident, what happens, right? So adding to that, security considerations. So how do you prevent a hack controlling that car, which is self-driven, lots of AI in there, and securing access to data, securing, again, it's all intertwined, right? The ethics, the resilience, the ownership of information that goes into these models, and to protect these models not getting into the wrong hands. The good guys have always got to be ahead of the bad guys. So we'll solve these problems over time, but the opportunity is amazing.
So it's interesting how I mentioned earlier that AI has been around for 40, 50 years. But why is it now that we're entering into the AI era? It's because we have much more powerful hardware. If you think about the servers that we have, is a lot more powerful to handle the workloads that's required. If you think about storage, the amount of data we got to store, today's technology allows us to store a lot of data. The third one is bandwidth, networking bandwidth. Think about mobile, 5G, we're moving into 6G, Wi-Fi, the broad bandwidth that we have. And without these capabilities, we wouldn't be able to accept, and adopt AI. The most interesting example of an AI machine is the autonomous car. It is essentially a moving computer, right? So if you don't have the data, if you don't have the capability to sense and to make life decisions, it's not possible. So this is only at the start, right? And once you have autonomous vehicles, you can have autonomous buses, transport. If you look at PSA, for example, in Singapore, they are moving into lights out operation, 24/7, manless operation. And that's really going to change the way logistic, transportation is going to be.
I mean, digital resiliency, we all know that you need to have a good systems, right? So whenever there's a disruption, the system itself must be able to recover very quickly, whether using the cloud services or whether you are using some of the data to build an application for you. So to balance between the AI and digital resiliency, we felt that you need to look at broad aspect. Like for example, you need to make sure that the securities of the systems is actually be able to control, so you can ensure that people who access the systems has the right access, so that you don't have any abuse of the system. The data model that you're being trained are being trained with the data that actually does not have accidental privacy information that is being recommended by the systems. Then at the end of the day, you have the whole set of the data management that actually manage the whole pipeline of the data when you do the training, so that when you have the whole governance structure were to come in, you can ensure that when there's a disruption to the system, the services that you build can quickly recover from there. Of course, last but not least, when you look at the resiliencies like digital resiliency and the balance of AI, you cannot be done by one single entity or one single organization. You need to have a collaboration across the different stakeholders. So in the white paper itself, we also advocate a collaboration approach across 5 key stakeholders that we have identified. One, of course, is a user who uses the system, the developer who include the model to build the services, the system integrator who integrate the whole solution together, the product vendor or the technology partner who provide their products, and lastly is the data collector. So if you were to have the collaboration across these 5 stakeholders, you can actually balance between the AI and the digital resiliency and allow the AI services to recover very quickly for any disruptions.
Digital resilience, I mean, obviously the first thing I can think about is cybersecurity.
Yep.
Just to make sure that it's safe, it is up and running. I'm not an expert in the area, but I think if you run a SaaS solutions, those are areas that every single company has to look at. I would think alongside with that, the ethical part is still important as well. End of the day is about doing the right thing, making sure you do to others what you want others to do to you. That piece has to be governed in some shape or form. The last piece, some hybrid, Tristan, is I call it the augmented intelligence. Mm-hmm. We have a vision that every company can become the autonomous enterprise, and it's a journey. But just like self-driving cars, we also want them to have the ability to take control, right? Not just fully driving and do everything by itself. So it's an evolving thing as we speak. So there's a security aspect, there is an ethical aspect, there's also an empowerment aspect with the AI and humans. That's how I see.
And for our last question, in one word, what is the main human or business impact you can see that AI will make in the next 10 years?
Greatness. I can't think a better word than greatness. If you think about, you draw an analogy about what AI is as compared to the past, think about, maybe about 150 years ago. And if you run a transportation business and you rely on carriages, okay, and you first notice, locomotive, whether is it a train or cars, and you don't embrace that technology and you're still using carriages, you'll be left behind.
Yeah.
You'll be much slower. You got to feed the horses, you got to manage the squires and all that. So AI is the same. If you don't embrace this, you'll be left behind. It's going to move so fast ahead.
Maybe I will use the word hybrid. Yeah.
Yep.
I think hybrid is because we believe that AI will not replace humans' jobs, but AI can actually accelerate and complements, just like productivity tools, from the days of calculator to the days of industrial revolutions using computers. So we think that this will accelerate the whole evolutions of the industry revolutions, maybe to 4.0 or 5.0 using AI. So hybrid is a model that I see.
I would say revolution.
Revolution, yeah.
Yeah, because the more and more technology is getting advanced, right? It just shows that how internet and browsers were 25 years ago, it was not considered important. And today, when we are living in the age of smartphones, where we can't stay away by checking our messages or browsing something, when ChatGPT is available for anyone who has a smartphone, it just revolutionizes the way we operate, the way we think. People, there was a term that, Google made it to the Webster dictionary. I want to Google it. Nobody wants to say, I want to search for it. Search is a word that came from, don't know from when, maybe Latin, right? But Google is the one that made its entry in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Down the line, I don't know, maybe ChatGPT or maybe another technology might come in. And that's the way how the current generation is going to learn, and the next generation is going to live with it. And that will be the revolution that we'll be looking at.
I would say autonomous. Really bringing the likes of self-healing, self-running, creating a software that will power the world in a much better place and make all of us a better human being.
I think I'm looking for a 3-day work week as a result of AI, and I've got reasons to believe that. Right, there's a lot of commotion there that AI is going to take our jobs away and this and that, and some jobs will change. Right, so when drones came in, the helicopter and the cameramen who were taking footage from those helicopters, those jobs changed, and those photographers invested in drones, and overall new jobs got created. Similarly, with these co-pilot for everything, doctors become more effective, lawyers become more effective, software developers like us, we're already using co-pilot within the realms of the information we can use to train those models. And when digitization came in probably about 20 years ago with the advent of the internet, for banks, a 5.5-day work week became a 5-day work week, or computers started to do all the ledger balancing. Right? So digitization made people more effective and made them work at their own schedules. So with AI, I think leveraged properly by humanity, we can spend more time if our survival is taken care of within the realms of ethics.